I used to love TikTok. My girl would watch it on the sofa while I'm watching TV or working on something, and it would be giant tittied cosplayers dancing and lip syncing to some of your favorite top 40 hits. And I was like, oh, what a wonderful platform. And the moderator team was flat out told by the admins, you need to get ugly people off this platform. Only boost content if the person's attractive. And a bunch of ugly reporters got really mad about that one, but everybody else was like, oh, thank God. Biggest guy in the world at the time was a dude who lived with his parents and played with ducks. And the world was good and everything made sense. And then now, if anybody were to go on, you see middle-aged soccer moms bitching about men. You see girls in their 20s bitching about men. You see girls in their, home with their kids hanging out, bitching about their husband, bitching about a specific man, which I guess is a step up. And you're like, oh, this is annoying. We're at the big titty ones, girl. I guess they finally decided, you know what? Just open the floodgate. Let the ugly girls, let the mids have their day. Right? And all was not well. And then you're like, okay, so maybe the guys are better. And then you see a lot of guys on there. And what do? It's always a stitch with some dude sitting there like, Or he'll give some long-winded rant as to why the lady's fucking insane. And it's all boils down to the same thing. Everybody wants the world to be consistent. Not even fair, consistent. Everything boils down to people who want rules to follow that are consistent. Not good, not fair, consistent. And the problem is they don't know how to articulate that, so that's where you get a lot of gobbledygook where people are running their mouth about all kinds of stupid shit. Probably the hardest I was ever worked was during, I would say, my first or second year aboard ship. 189 days sailing. Which is interesting because when you're deployed, you're generally going to sail about 180 days that year. We did 189. We didn't even deploy. We were doing what they call it the Esquimalt 500, where you just do laps around Vancouver Island, which is one of the hardest to navigate passages ever. We had sails the day before Christmas. We had weekend sails. We had 1 week we had 4-day sails, which is annoying as hell because ramping it up and ramping it down in between a sail is like a very labor-intensive thing. So if you're doing that once and then you sail for 2 weeks, that's one thing. If you're doing it every day, it just kills you. Here's the thing, though. Morale was never higher. Never higher. Nobody was drunk. Nobody was on Adderall. Nobody was stressed out. Nobody was starting fights. Nobody was like worried about women or anything. Everybody was just highly motivated and working their ass off. And the big reason was because it was consistent. Everybody knew what was going to happen. The schedule was set out. We're working our balls off. It can't be changed. Can't be changed. And then once you can't change anything, once it becomes the law of gravity, everybody just got in line, started doing it. And it was nice. And I don't even want to say this like it was a bad thing or anything, because it's like, it was fun times. Some of the best fun. Got the receipts to match it. And you kind of take that same example from my life and you apply it to everything. And you realize everybody wants that. They all want a formal, structured relationship between those around them and the people that they deal with, whether it's coworkers, whether it's cops, whether it's whatever. And I noticed this, and this originally came from, and if you guys are like, why is this even red pill? Well, it originally came from Athol K, where you talk about the spectrum between formal and informal relationships and how they affect communication styles, which is really neat. Conversations and relationships between people follow a spectrum of formality. On one end, you have highly formalized relationships. That means military, that's dealing with, like, if you have a lawsuit, the Amber Heard trial, for example, super formal. And on the other side, you have informal communication styles. That is meeting somebody you've never met before in a different country. That's sexual relationships, marriages, that sort of thing. So why does that matter, and why do you need to know this? Well, the big reason is it changes your style of communication considerably depending on where you are along this spectrum. And a lot of the time when guys talk about calibration, which you may not have heard in this space, what they're referring to is understanding the level of formality in the relationship you're currently in and the rules that govern the levels of formality that are there. And there's always rules. It's not so much like hard and fast rules, but there's, I guess, guidelines would be a better way to put it. So for example, you're pulled over by a cop. How do you act in that situation? Well, generally speaking, the cop can tell you to do something and you pretty much have to do it. Not because it's right, not because you should, but because he can arrest your ass or shoot you in the face. So yeah, it's a formal relationship. But here's the thing, the cop gets discretion. So the cop can let you off the warning and give you the ticket. You can give the cop a lot of grief, and if he's having a bad day, he can Rodney King your ass. If he's having a good day, he can just take it with a smile. It's like, I'll have a good day, sir. Ignore it. So it's this weird, one-sided, informal, formal relationship. But there are rules. Don't admit to committing a crime. Do you know how fast you were going? No, I do not. How fast do you think you were going? Under the speed limit. It's the only answers you can give. Are you lying to him? Probably. But that's the thing. He knows, you know, everybody knows there, but there's all these little unwritten rules. But they're kind of formalized. Like, everybody can know. You could give somebody a guide on how to interact with the police, which, by the way, don't. Unless you absolutely have to and get a lawyer first. That's the only rule you need to know there, but you know what I mean. So it's formal. It's good. It's open communication. Everybody has a style of communicating that shares information. The subtext may be there, but it's very, very, unimportant on things. Same thing with the courts. Lawyer asks you a question in front of the judge. The judge says it's okay. You answer the question. There's not a lot of room for improvisation. On the other hand, you go all the way back to sexual relationships. Okay, you're married now. What codes of conduct does that entail? This is where I talk about with consistency. You remember when people will talk about how marriage used to be, and they always say it's so much better back then. Men were men and women were women. Because you got married and you gave the covenant before God. She's not allowed to cheat. You're not allowed to smack her around. Everybody's happy. But you see this? It's like they're not, but that's not happiness. That's not happiness at all. That's consistency. Your wife doesn't have to sleep with you. Oh, no, well, she does. The Bible says she's not allowed to turn you down for sex. And if she does it 3 times, you're allowed to fuck the maid. You see what I mean? It's a rule set. It's not some kind of moral imperative. It's everybody wants things to be consistent. You know why? Because our brains are fundamentally lazy. And when they're fundamentally lazy, what do they like to do? I don't want to have to think about it. I want my, what's that instinct? The spinal column. I want the spine to make all the decisions. The brain will sit here for, if you need me, I'll be here. But right now, I'm just going to soak up this wonderful, wonderful caloric surplus you're feeding me right now. So what we got here, they're informal. What does informal mean? That means hard power doesn't work. There is no enforcement mechanism in the same way that a court or a police officer has. So when you don't have hard power, you have a concept called soft power. And if you've never heard about it, soft power is almost a euphemism for influence. Instead of somebody having to do something, things you shall not do, it's things you want to do. Okay, where do we live off? Oh, yes, luxury branding. Yeah, so luxury branding. The world makes no sense, right? So what do you do about that? Well, that's the thing. It makes no sense because there's no formal instructions for anything. And this is largely what I would say is the feminization of things. Because like I said before, guys want consistency, right? I'll put up with any kind of bullshit as long as there's consistency. So the world makes no sense because formal things don't exist anymore. And you kind of see that whenever you see people talking about how feminism is infiltrating institutions and blah, blah, blah. Again, it's right in the coattails of a technological change. As the world gets safer, the power of men to influence others is waning. And I don't mean that in a hyperbolic way. I just mean when things are dangerous, men being in charge is good. Game really is the great equalizer. And what game is maximizing your ability to navigate informal hierarchies. Game. And what is game? Game is influence. Everybody's like, well, you can't manipulate people. It's like, well, everybody can manipulate people. It's not hard. A baby cries, a mom comes running to it. That's manipulation. Is that wrong? No, it's different now because it's a baby. Oh, fair enough. Well, when a girl's in trouble and she starts crying and then some dude comes to help her out, she's manipulating him. Is that a bad thing? Oh, no. She was going to get raped. He was there to save her. Thank God for all that stuff. Oh, that's great. So I guess it's only manipulation if a guy does it then. Well, that's different. Okay, yeah. And you can have this conversation with everybody and you'll find it basically boils down to that. Is it bad or is it good? Is a man doing it? Then it's bad. Is a man not doing it? Well, then it's good. Are they doing it to a man? Well, that's not so bad. The only reason this works is because you're complicit in it. You're deferring to female authority. When a girl tells you that's bad when you're doing it, and then you believe her, you just made it real. So yeah, Now you're confused. I don't get it. The world doesn't make sense. Somebody accused me of something for their own best interest. I bought into that, and now my life is worse off for it. Why can't the world make sense? If only there was something you could do at some point in this journey of becoming your own slave that could stop all this happening. And if only there was a book to talk about becoming your own mental point of origin and not letting other people judge you, some kind of assertiveness training, some kind of way that you could learn to say no and not feel guilty about it, if only. And I love it because those guys understand, like, the world doesn't make sense. And that's okay, because they were like, okay, the world doesn't make sense. So take the things that concern me, shrink it out, right? So what can I do? I can't stop feminism. I can't stop the politics. I can't stop this. All right, so focus on my job, but focus on my family. Well, you can't change women, and the wife doesn't do what you want her to do, and the kids don't do what they want you to do, and they're just all over the place and they're doing whatever. And I don't understand that. It makes no sense. Okay, so shape it in. And you always end up in the same spot. Like, my boss is fucked. I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, yeah, well, you can't really affect.
Boom, what's up, fam? Got some big news to share that unfortunately is not so good. So I'm gonna jump right into it. You're gonna watch this video and you're gonna cry. At least we can laugh at your ass as you cry, like in the corner, like a little girl in the fetal position.